Let us know peace, for as long as the moon shall rise, for as long as the rivers shall flow, for as long as the sun shall shine, for as long as the grass shall grow, let us know peace.
O Great Spirit, creator of all things, human beings, trees, grass, berries, help us, be kind to us. Let us be happy on earth. Let us lead our children to a good life and old age. These our children, give them good minds to love one another. O Great Spirit, be kind to us. Give these people the favor to see green trees, green grass, flowers, and berries this next spring. So with all be gay, O Great Spirit, we ask of you.
Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky. Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring. Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets the snow. Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
May all I say and all I think be in harmony with you. God within me, God beyond me, in the spirit of the truth.
When the earth is sick and dying, there will come a tribe of people from all races who will put their faith in deeds, not words, and make the planet green again.
Grandfather, sacred one, teach us love, compassion, and oneness, as we may heal the earth and heal each other.
O Great Spirit, help me always to speak the truth quietly, to listen with an open mind when others speak, and to remember the peace that may be found in silence.
What is life? It is the flash of a firefly in the night. It is the breath of the buffalo in the wintertime. It is the little shadow which runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset.
O Great Spirit who dwells in the sky, lead us to the path of peace and understanding. Let all of us live together as brothers and sisters. Our lives are so short. Walking upon Mother Earth's surface, let our eyes be open to all the blessings you have given us. Please hear our prayers, O Great Spirit.
May the sun bring you new energy by day. May the moon softly restore you by night. May the rain wash away your worries. May the breeze blow new strength into your being. May you walk gently through the world and know its beauty all the days of your life.
From the corners of creation to the center where we stand, let all things be blessed and holy, all is fashioned by your hand. Brother, wind and sister, water, Mother Earth and Father Sky, sacred plants, sacred creatures, sacred people of the land. In the east, the place of dawning, there is beauty in the morn. Hear the seeker finds new visions as each secret day is born. All who honor life around them, all who honor life within, they shall shine with light and glory when the morning breaks again. From the corners of creation to the center where we stand, let all things be blessed and holy, all is fashioned by your hand. Brother, wind and sister water, Mother earth and Father sky, sacred plants and sacred creatures, sacred people of the land. In the south, the place of growing, there is wisdom in the earth, both the painful song of dying and the joyful song of birth. As the earth gives back her lifeblood, so her children's hearts may beat, we give back to her our reverence, holy ground beneath our feet. From the corners of creation to the center where we stand, let all things be blessed and holy, all is fashioned by your hand. Brother, wind and sister water, Mother earth and Father sky, sacred plants and sacred creatures, sacred people of the land. In the north, the place of wisdom, there is holy darkness deep. Hear the silent song of mystery may awaken from your sleep. Hear the music still and holy, sounds beneath the snow and night, in the ones who wait with patience for the coming of the light. From the corners of creation to the center where we stand, let all things be blessed and holy, all is fashioned by your hand. Brother, wind and sister water, Mother earth and Father sky, sacred plants and sacred creatures, sacred people of the land. In the west, the place of seeing, there is born a vision new of the servant of the servants who proclaimed a gospel true. Let the creatures of creation echo back creation's prayer. Let the Spirit now breathe through us and restore the sacred there. From the corners of creation to the center where we stand, let all things be blessed and holy, all is fashioned by your hand. Brother, wind and sister water, Mother earth and Father sky, sacred plants and sacred creatures, sacred people of the land.
The Lord be with you. And also with you. The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to Matthew. Glory to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. The Gospel of Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
God, your word is mystery and light. Open the mystery and enlighten us. Amen. Squeak. Will it geek squeak? Thank you. Okay. Stories. Well, maybe I should actually begin by saying, some of you might recognize this is a talking stick, and very important when sharing stories or someone is speaking, that whoever holds it, whether it's the littlest of child or the most of the elders, there is quiet and silence and respect for them who speak. And I got this maybe about 40 years ago, and it's from the West Coast, and I thought it would be nice to have today on Canada Day. New stories and ancient stories enrich us and they define us. And we're celebrating, we keep saying 150 years, but we know it's 150 years plus about 14,000. Because that's when the indigenous Halishak Nation people sheltered on a mysterious strip of coastline in Canada existed, and we now have evidence to confirm this in the last ice age. Can you imagine the stories or the thin threads that passed on, because it was always oral tradition from generation to generation? But thanks to recent discoveries, science is reaffirming those claims. They were made along the central coast of British Columbia on Triquet Island, where the remains of charcoals and tools and fish hooks and spears used to hunt marine mammals and even a hand drill used for lighting fires were found there. So that makes it one of the oldest settlements in North America. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, I'm sure many of you have watched, he had a Canada Day interview with Paul Wells. And he was asked, he has stories of Canada Day gone by. Now, probably no one found this controversial, but what I like about it, it's a personal story. So I quote him, he said, "I remember wandering with my dad." He was asked about Canada Day stories. "I remember wandering with my dad through Confederation Park, through Majors Hill Park, on the hill, looking at all the different exhibits. I remember there were trampolines set up. We got to jump on the trampolines. I tried fencing for the first time with Canada's fencing team. It was just an opportunity to wander with my dad and my brothers, you know, through throngs of happy people with maple leaves on their cheeks. And then inevitably we got to watch the fireworks from my dad's window at 24 Sussex, because we never got to stay out that late." Well, then he went on to talk about the painful parts of our story as Canadians, saying that we've got some very dark histories, from internments to turning away the St. Louis and the Komagatu Maru, but none is darker than our abject failure to respect the rights and spirit and intent of the original treaties with First Nations, the Metis Nation, the Inuit people. We have to transform, he said, that relationship. And there are lots of people who are skeptical, I'm still quoting him, over generations, despite good intentions from time to time. Terrible things have happened. I go into this very wide-opened and aware of the kind of work we need to do, and quite frankly, the work that's going to stretch over generations. So then he was asked about the challenge to eliminate long-term boil water advisories. And that because he mentioned that the commitment to the Indigenous people, the response that he got was that when you started, there were 133 advisories, meaning 133 communities with not safe water. And the comment was, at this date, there are now 135. So he struggled and answered it, but it tells us that we put out our stories and then we get back stories that sometimes interact with our stories and give us more thought and more to ponder. So I want to ask you, last week, how many stories did you share? Could you even begin to tell me? Probably a lot, and some of them very brief. Did you share one from your past, or was it something that happened to you? Did it reveal a little more about you? Did it feel good to tell your story? Was it well received? Do you feel sometimes frustrated when you've got a story to tell and someone doesn't give you that opportunity? And how many stories were shared with you? And then maybe most important, how do they stay with you and float back up, as it did for Justin Trudeau? I started to count, but I lost count of the stories I heard this past week. Philip Moorhead and his cousin Catherine and I were sharing a lot of stories while Philip was lying in the hospital bed. It was really important to do that with him. And at the Renew Team barbecue at Bell and Gord's, more stories came out. Then Jim Welch and I were sharing car mishap stories on Friday. Tom too. I don't have a car at the moment. I have a rental where I have a loan. A very powerful story was told also several weeks ago as some of us at St. John's were part of a deanery blanket exercise at Trinity Church. How many have been in a blanket exercise? Raise your hands. They've been around for about 30 years. And so what happens is blankets are laid out to represent the land of Canada. And we're all keen, we're all on it. We've got our feet planted on our piece of property. And is it ever a shock? Because it's integrated learning so that you actually are interactive with it. And so we play the role of the Aboriginal people, and gradually our land is stripped from us. Sometimes we're told we're leaving not only because of broken treaties, but because we died among with millions and thousands from diseases that were brought to us even in the gift of blankets from Europeans that we had no immunity to. And some of those present found themselves fighting back tears. And later in the talking circle, we passed a talking stick, and each further shared how this story connected with their own personal stories. Tales and stories passed from generation to generation are powerful. And as I've said before, the time with my own parents is so precious. I can't get enough of their stories. So today, I'm getting to the story that Beverly shared with us, and she knew it was a challenging story, but we know it survived, so it was passed along. We know that God does not condone human sacrifice, yet this story still stayed in so that we could glean something other than that from it. It's a fearful one, and it's been passed on from generation to generation, and I'm going to talk about it in just one moment. But first, I'm going to tell you another story that I think connects very well with it and its meaning. And it's from a fellow traveler in life who journaled wherever she went. And I only preface it that on this Canada Day, a wonderful symbol of who we are is the turtle, both because it is known to live 150 years, and in First Nation and Inuit culture, it's a beautiful symbol of Mother Earth and Mother God. Here's her story. Several summers ago, I spent 3 days on a barrier island where loggerhead turtles were laying their eggs. One night while the tide was out, I watched a huge female heave herself up on the beach and dig her nest and empty her eggs into it. Afraid of disturbing her, I left before she was finished. The next morning, I returned to see if I could find the spot where her eggs lay hidden in the sand. What I found were her tracks leading in the wrong direction. Instead of heading back to the sea, she had wandered into the dunes, which were already as hot as asphalt in the morning sun. A little way inland, I found her, exhausted, all but baked, her head and flippers caked with dried sand. After pouring water on her and covering her with sea oats, I fetched a park ranger who returned with a jeep to rescue her. He flipped her on her back, strapped the chains around her front legs, hooked the chains to a trailer hitch on his jeep. Then I watched, horrified, as he took off, yanking her body forward so that her mouth filled with sand and her neck bent so far back I thought it would break. The ranger hauled her over the dunes and down onto the beach. At the ocean's edge, he unhooked her and turned her right side up. She lay motionless in the surf as the water lapped at her body, washing the sand from her eyes and making her skin shine again. A wave broke over her. She lifted her head slightly, moving her back legs. Other waves brought her further back to life until one of them made her light enough to find a foothold and push off back into the ocean. Watching her swim slowly away and remembering her nightmare ride through the dunes, I reflected that it is sometimes hard to tell whether you are being killed or saved by the hands that turn your life upside down. The Genesis story of Isaac's father Abraham near human sacrifice of his son is one of the Bible's texts of terror, where indeed it is hard to tell whether you are being killed or saved by the hands that turn your life upside down. They are these texts in the Bible which pry our fingers away from our own ideas about who God should be and how God should act. And I don't know about you, but my first reaction to the story is anger. I'm angry at God, who would call a parent to sacrifice a child. I'm angry at a father who would go along with such a request. I'm angry at an absent mother who does nothing to stop it. And while I don't think it's the responsibility of children to stop their own abuse, I admit that I'm angry at a son who doesn't cry out, "Stop it!" when his father binds him and places him on the altar. But then I am taking this story literally, and I know God does not in any way condone human sacrifice. But are our children sacrificed sometimes in the brutal way of the world? Are we complicit sometimes in the pain they carry in life that leads them to places or decisions where they are at risk? Does our land of abundance that we celebrate today in any way by what we do or fail to do harm children around the world? I suspect so. If a child dies of hunger every minute around the world, it's less than that. And I have surplus in my fridge, it's on me in some ways, their want and demise. When we hear these texts of terror, we find our teeth and our hearts are put on edge, and we think that something must be wrong. But it is not. We are pushed to think outside our comfort zone for a reason. There is a fundamental hope to which these tales of terror drive us to, that however wrong they may seem, however misbegotten and needlessly cruel, God may be present in them, working redemption in ways we're not equipped to discern. Our fear of God's methods may turn out to be a lot like this, and this might help you if you've had surgery or someone. The fear of a surgeon's knife, which must wound before it can heal. While we would prefer to forego the pain altogether, our survival depends on our trust in the surgeon's skill. If we believe that the one to whom we surrender ourselves is competent, then all will be well. I remember when Elizabeth was 5 years old and she was going into surgery. And she innocently insisted that she would go to the hospital wearing her ballet gold tutu. And she had her little wand. And she smiled so lovingly at me as they took her away. But when she recovered and she was in pain, I can't even begin to describe the look she gave me. It was like, "You betrayed me and I will never forgive you," because she was in pain. But she needed the surgery. When did something happen to you that hurt you so bad that nothing really makes any sense about it, but that over time gave you something back? If we are open to this possibility in our interpretation of Scripture, then we are open to the possibility in our lives as well. Whether the terror is heard on Sunday or lived on Monday, the question is the same. Do we trust God to act in all events of our lives, or only the ones that meet our approval? Will sometimes God let us go to the edge of despair, where some hidden truth or treasure we just refuse to see finally surfaces from the dark abyss? Or some wound that's festering and infecting us, God says, "I can't wait anymore," and removes it, and it's a brutal operation at best. It is sometimes hard to tell whether you are being killed or saved by the hands that turn your life upside down. I am almost certain that is how Abraham felt when he set out on Mount Moriah with his son in that night. But something deep within him told him, it's going to work out, all will be well, because God's in it, no matter how terrified and confused I am. How else could Abraham have done what he did? And for that matter, how else could Jesus walk straight to the cross and suffer at the brutal hands of the Roman authorities. The inescapable truth is that sacrifice and offering are part of every pilgrim's faith journey. If you ask anyone who has been at it a long time, I'm sure they'll tell you the details from their path. They have stories that can't be told casually. They need time and a safe place, maybe a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or an intimate lunch to share. And it's not because God wants us to suffer, but rather the way of God sometimes is through the suffering that comes with letting go of the things that interfere with putting God first in our life. There are many soul-transforming stories in our lives that landmark this letting go. The art is to figure out what those things are. And now one of my rules of thumb is that whatever person, place, situation, or aspect of myself I'm clinging to most, whatever things or person or place or aspect of myself I am investing the most energy, is what I need most to offer over to God in prayer. So I wonder, was Abraham unconsciously over time making his beloved son his God? And that he was trusting in Isaac, as we might trust in our children, to give his sense of self, of worth, of purpose? Was he losing something of himself, even if he was embracing the wonderful life of his son? Was the love of his child consuming him and diminishing his love and trust in God? I don't know. But I do remember there was a day in seminary where we asked this question. We're asked, what is not negotiable in your life with God? I don't know if I've shared that with you before. And you know what? I didn't think about it. I wrote down my daughter. Now, I feel badly because I have a son, and I absolutely love my son as much as my daughter. But my daughter was the youngest, and I instinctively felt she needed me lately more than my Ninja Turtle, cowabunga, rowdy 3-year-old son. This sort of letting go to God is simple, but it's not easy. We let go of parents, even our partners, when we know we are no longer good for each other. We are asked to even let go of our children. And I always tell parents to baptize, are you willing to let your child go? And they go, what are you talking about? We love them. Of course you love them. You love them with everything that you are. But when you baptize them, you're letting them go and saying, we are stepping out of the way. We're going to love and nurture them, but we are stepping out of the way so they can know and follow the will of God. And I remember when once my friend daughter chose to be a missionary in a rather dangerous country. And he said, you know what? I brought her to the church every Sunday. Now I have to ask for the courage to accept her path. We are so accustomed to taking responsibility and being in charge of our lives. I'm just about done. But deep down we know that ultimately we really are not in charge. And I have found this letting go to be a messy business. Now I think you'll like this quote I have of someone who speaks of it this way. Everything I ever let go of had claw marks on it. It can take us decades to let go, and I'm sure the gates of heaven are more congested with unclaimed luggage than Toronto Pearson International Airport. But when you and I make headway in letting go, it propels us to deeper spiritual growth. And it's part of what I see Jesus pointing to when he speaks of setting your mind on heavenly things and saying that our burdens are light if we let him manage them. It's so definitely part of our path. Letting go is not a path of less suffering, but rather any suffering we encounter in letting go is a generative kind of suffering rather than the deadening kind of suffering we live with when we have not let go. And so I come to my last paragraph. As with Abraham's offering of Isaac and God's offering of God's very self in Jesus, God will take what we offer and what we let go to God and return it to us, probably in ways we do not expect. And those are really important stories to don't repress them. The process may involve some moments that seem a lot like the sea turtle, hair-raising ride through the dunes. But fear not, God will return what we offer in God's own time and in ways designed to bring life and joy. And then we will see that what we have sacrificed, the things that we have lifted and let go of to God, in fact, our very selves have been transformed for glory. Now this happens whether you and I live to 150 like sea turtles or our country. All this remains mystery. But like you, I'm growing in being able to trust the deep mystery of God. Amen. now a series of people to come forward and simply give us some quotes of wisdom from our Canadian heritage.
Humans did not weave the web of life. We are merely strands in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves.
Rev'd, all your dreams will fields unknown, where the wildflowers sink into the sun. I will meet you there, and we shall dance until the sun rises once again.
Grandfather Rolling Thunder, Cherokee Medicine Elder. This is the earth, healed again, growing green and blue. I want you to remember this exactly as it is. And then go and tell the people that if enough of us hold this image in their minds, we can heal the earth and make it like it was a long time ago.
From Chief Dan Seattle. You must teach your children that the ground beneath their feet is the ashes of our grandfathers, so that they will respect the land. Tell your children that the earth is rich with the lives of our kin. Teach your children what we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. If men and women spit upon the ground, they spit upon themselves. This we know. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This we know. All things are connected, like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected.
Let us confess the faith of our baptism as we say, I believe in God, our Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. He was conceived by God of the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day he rose again. not let them be afraid. Queen, may the peace of the Lord be always with you.
And also with you.